Well, hello. Welcome to ICRC's COVID-19 HR and Business Updates. My name is Pandy Pridemore, Principal Consultant for the Human Resource USA. We're so glad you're here. Today, we're going to continue a conversation we started 2 weeks ago in regards to, all right, so we get to open up our doors. What's next? Except here at COVID-19 HR and Business Updates, we like to do things a little different. So I'm going to start out with my vision for the show in that I'm excited that we've got such a viewership, but I want to reassure you right now that what you're going to see today is something that you're going to literally want to write down and keep with you for the next couple of weeks. The team that I put together when we do these shows has one major mission, and that's to keep the information that we provide for each one of you to be relevant and engaging. That means that with all the information that you're getting from all these massive resources that we are just bombarded with on a daily basis, we're going to go above and beyond what those resources are providing for you right now. I am just really almost getting blurred with the same message over and over and over again. And the team here has really tried very hard to put information together for the next few shows that are solutions for you. One of the messages I want to really put out to you before we get started on the show is that we understand that we've got viewers with less than 10 employees, maybe less than 50 employees, some with well over 200 employees. And I want to just remind each and every one of you that not every solution is going to fit for all of you. So listen carefully to what we give you in terms of some action plans, some policies, some things to be talking to your management teams about. And if you have a question about how that's going to fit within your company, within your business model, within your team, please send it to us. Because again, the more relevant this is to you, the better we feel, and the more we're able to meet the mission of this particular show. So now that I'm done with my little rant, I'm excited to say that we've got two of our most popular visitors back on the show. Tracy Ruberg is going to be joining us later in the show from T6 Group. Tracy is also the executive director for the Circuit, which is a huge IT organization here in the area that's doing some phenomenal educational and supportive things for IT professionals. She's going to be helping us understand what specifically companies need to be looking at. Yes, we need to look at our IT and we need to be monitoring our remote use of IT, but what specifically do we need to be spending our energy and time on? Because again, money is tight and security is of the utmost. But knowing that I'm the HR person, we got to start with the HR stuff because it's kind of special to me. So I brought back one of my favorite people in the world, Scott Warwick. Scott Warwick with Scott Warwick Employment Law Services over in Columbus, great mentor of mine. We're going to start talking about some policies and the liability and risks around not having those. And again, get your pencil and paper out because you're going to want to write this stuff down. Scott?
Okay, well, thanks for having me back. Yeah, I'll tell you, the last month has been an absolute blur with putting together materials and answering questions and dealing with issues that we never really dealt with before. And when I'm looking at what employers have to do, let's look at where the rules are laid down from OSHA. Okay, because that tends to get employers' attention. OSHA has put out its list of things that employers have to be doing. Okay, so we talk policy. I'll tell you, just for an FYI and CYA and all those types of things, you wouldn't think that you would have to train people in how to put on and take off a mask. You wouldn't think that you would have to train people in washing their hands. You wouldn't think you would have to train people in basic housekeeping. You do. You do, okay? And I'm going to post at my website, probably in the next 48 hours, scottwarwick.com, like you said, Pandy, this stuff is, overwhelming for employers. I try to put it down into boil it down type of stuff. And I'm going to post this stuff there for free. And I know you had mentioned before we got started that some of your clients were getting like one packet of 62 pages of things to read. Okay.
Yes.
That's all well and good. Okay. But I'll tell you, you're seeing more and more government agencies. We want to adopt something into policy. And I'll tell you, I'm putting handouts on my website in PDF format, download them. And I've discovered a really cool thing. You can right click on a PDF and edit. Okay. It's just wonderful. And then you can turn it into a Word document, transform that into your policy. Okay. Hand wash. What do we do here? You do not come to work if you've got a temperature of over 100.4. You don't come to work. Okay. But here's what OSHA is telling, and understand, I'm hearing this more and more about, I'm afraid of getting sued by my employees. Well, it's not being sued by your employers and by your employees. Okay. So let's just look at liability here for a moment, where your policies and training all come in. Well, you have workers' comp. Every state in the union and the territories, you've got workers' comp. The deal with workers' comp is we're going to protect you, your wages and your medical bills if you're injured on the job, and in return, you can't sue us. That's the deal. Now, there are exceptions to that. Like years ago, we had a Cincinnati employer that ordered a bunch of employees down into a ditch, and the ditch closed in on them and killed them. We call that manslaughter. All right. Now, having said that, okay, yeah, that's just rich. Through the years, you could sue your employer for what was gross negligence, intentional tort. Well, within the last 5 years, the Ohio Supreme Court has ruled the only intentional tort, gross negligence, that you can sue your employer for in Ohio and overcome workers' comp is when you don't put a safety guard out. Well, we're not talking safety guards, we're talking COVID. Okay, so your risk to employees isn't going to come from a lawsuit. I'll tell you, someone before we got started here had mentioned that some of their clients are having a problem. The employees keep calling the Ohio Department of Health on them.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've had several clients with that. Absolutely.
Go
Absolutely.
with
And talk about confusion.
Yeah.
Absolute confusion.
And I love this because, how come I have to worry about employment law? You're kidding me, right? Okay. What's the big part of your budget? Okay. Labor. The people are the folks who are going to execute. And I will tell you, the fastest growing area of the law is employment law.
Yeah.
I love to talk to medical people for that reason. They're afraid of malpractice. It's not the patients, it's your own people going to shoot you back.
All right, so let's back up to an earlier comment. Let's clarify for everybody. So many still have the perception that OSHA is only relevant to that manufacturing setting or that agricultural setting where there's high risk, very food service, very evident accident, prevalent type situations. But that's not true. OSHA has jurisdiction over every company there is, right?
Right. OSHA is like COVID. They go everywhere. Okay. There's no borders. And here's my point. Great timing. OSHA isn't going to just show up. They're not going to say, gee, I wonder what Bob's, chicken ranch is doing today. They're not going to do that. Your employees are going to call them. Okay. So this is what you got to concern with. Okay. It's reducing your liability, but bottom line, you absolutely positively have to be aware of what OSHA is requiring you to train your people in. And understand, I'm not saying, gee, I think I should train my people. You train your people in these types of things we're going to talk about. And if you don't do that, and if some of your people are afraid to come back and they think it's unsafe, they will pick up the phone and they will call OSHA and they will turn you in. And I will tell you, if OSHA comes in, and if you don't have any hand sanitizer, you've never trained your people in washing their hands, you've never trained them how to put on a mask, you don't supply masks, get out your checkbook.
There it is. There it is. One of your favorite phrases.
They're going to chew on you.
And Scott, come on. This is not something that we just say, hey, by the way, you tell me you know how to wash your hands. I'm telling clients, even though it sounds ridiculous, you have to get a sign sheet. I mean, you have to show that you took this seriously and that you walked them through.
Yeah.
Even if it is every week, you're walking through, making sure that the cleaning supplies are in their place, that there's adequate supplies of soap in the bathroom. I literally had someone go in and check the men's bathroom today on a client because they are notorious. The office unit that they rent from is notorious for not having soap in the men's restroom. But I even told another client the other day, actually it's part of the Guardian program for us, I want certifications from the cleaning services to say that they are knowledgeable in the CDC and OSHA guidelines for COVID.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And just think how this plays out. And just like you said, there's no soap. You've got to be kidding me. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, those days are gone. When I was coming up in my career, we had cleaning day at the bank once a year, whether it needed it or not. Okay. We get out all the cleaning supplies. We clean it. Oh no, let me tell you right now, one of the things that needs to be in your training means you can't just say, okay, here's what my policy is. We're going to clean frequently. No, you put this stuff into your policy. Wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. 95% of everybody out there barely gets their hands wet. Mm-hmm. And just remember this very true fact. Humans are disgusting. They are disgusting. Oh my God. 40% wear their underwear 2, 3, 4 days in a row. We're not going to monitor that. I'll tell you that.
Well, with that said, we need to also I'm also telling clients, you need to revisit your visitor policy of individuals coming in that are off the street. And that's a vendor, that's a customer, that's a family member. We really need to be on top of that. And that's a policy that most people just kind of brushed off to the side.
Great point. Because when you start talking about liability, oh, my employees, it's not your employees unless they call OSHA, okay, or something like this. The employees that the students that come in. I had a client on the phone this morning that has a private school.
Oh, good. Yes.
They're covered by workers' comp. Your vendors are not covered by workers' comp. Your visitors are not covered. That is premises liability. Here's what premises liability is. You got to think about is it's raining outside. We've had this for years. It's raining something terrible. And you look outside and there's puddles of water on your tile floor and everything. If you just go, it's all right, no big deal. And someone comes in, Mrs. Smith comes in, she's 90 years old, slips and falls, breaks her one good hip, you're in trouble. But let's say you were over there putting down rugs, you were mopping and everything. You were being diligent, trying to keep this, and she slipped and fell anyway. You don't have liability. Mm-hmm. Now, she might try to say you have liability, but understand, it comes down to negligence. You're not in trouble with OSHA, and you're not in trouble with premises liability from people and from the public because something happened. That's a misnomer. You are in trouble because you were negligent. And if someone can show that you were not doing, and again, let's go back, and OSHA doesn't develop its standards. Understand, OSHA borrows everybody else's standards. It goes to National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH. It goes to the CDC. So what you want to be doing is training your people to make sure that this stuff's taken care of, particularly if you have visitors coming in and things, because COVID is a known issue. So yes, you are going to be expected to have tissues. You are going to be expected to clean those doors and things like this. Not once a year. You're going to be cleaning desk surfaces and doorknobs and elevator buttons 2-3 times a day. Absolutely. It's a new world.
Well, and I even think that it would be advisable, or even a call center environment that's so non-safety focused, to even put together safety committees now in this environment to say, look, you guys, where you take ownership as employees and you monitor or give us suggestions. Because again, as you mentioned before the show, you get a group of employees disgruntled and fussing, and all sorts of bad things are going to happen.
And this is kind of funny because this has been around for years. And all of a sudden, like you said, OSHA. Oh, OSHA? Yeah, well, how long has that been around? Oh, 1970. Most of you weren't even born yet. Okay, so This stuff is not new. Let's talk about disgruntled employees. And we always think, oh, what's the legal ramification? Do not make a mistake on this. If you are a private employer and you have a bunch of employees who are afraid of this because they've actually been watching the COVID channel, for the last 2 weeks, now they come back to work and they see that, oh my gosh, there's no hand sanitizer. Nobody's, I saw Ed in the bathroom and he wasn't washing his hands, and, on and on and on. He never trained on this. Okay, they can call OSHA. They can do that. They can also walk right out the door. And you say, well, I'll just fire them. No, that is a union activity. You don't have to have a union. Employees have a right to speak out and congregate together on their own behalf. Anything that's related to the wages, terms and conditions of employment, benefits, that's what they're allowed to do. So if you actually did have a union, they couldn't go on a wildcat strike because that contract would control when they could strike. But I'll tell you, I've got clients where they've got employees, they're going to fire them because they're refusing to come to work. And it's like 4 or 5 employees saying this place isn't clean. And I said, well, if you fire them, you just violated the National Labor Relations Act. And well,
yeah, let's make that. Well, and that's a really good point. When we talked about training supervisors, we want to make sure that the business owners, the senior leadership team, anyone who has the ability to exercise discretion and authority on terminating and disciplinary action, you need to be trained on the National Labor Relations Board and the National Labor Relations Act. That is an absolute must. I push that on my clients.
Yes.
I would encourage you, when I told you to start writing things down, that should be at the top of the list of what you're writing down on the show today, is that you need to get with a consultant or an attorney and be trained on that, because that's going to be a major driving force in this environment right now.
Yeah. See, the National Labor Relations Act gives them a right to whistleblow on everything. And it's much easier than the whistleblower law in Ohio. And so, really think about this. There's a few things to think about. Why do I want to follow all these things? Well, first of all, you want to keep a clean work area. Assume your people do not know how to put on a mask. Most people take the mask and put it on with their hands and things like this and take it off with. No, your hands are covered in germs. You wash your hands, you sanitize your hands, and then you touch the ears, okay? Your hands are covered in cooties. You then touch the mask. You then breathe them in. Why did you bother wearing the mask? It, makes no sense. So you are diligent. What's the big payoff? You don't have any cases of COVID. And I'll tell you, we talked about employees' rights. And why do you want to have them on the committee? You get buy-in. People are not going to complain about something they were part of.
Exactly.
Okay. Plus, if you do get a couple, 3 cases of COVID, I can tell you right now, being in Ohio, I would bet somebody is going to reach out and they're going to shut you down.
Yeah. Let's fall back on that. If by some odd chance you do have an employee who comes forward and says, look, I don't feel this is being handled correctly, or I don't think you understand this group over here is not wearing masks. No matter what that safety concern is, you need, as employers, business leaders, you need to be addressing that, or you need to get your safety committee to investigate that. You need to show some sort of diligent effort. You have to get down to the facts of it. Otherwise, if something happens to the individual that claimed the safety concern or was the whistleblower and you terminate them, or you start picking on them for performance issues, it's going to look like a retaliation claim. So you really need to follow up on any sort of claims like that. And here's another thing I want you to elaborate on, Scott, is I'm talking to my clients right now and telling them, look, you need, before even the door is open, you need to decide where your line is in the sand as to what's going to be a condition of employment. Are you going to require that everyone take a temperature? Are you going to require that they all wear their masks the entire time they're here? Are you going to make any kind of concessions, and who are those concessions going to be? Because you can't be shooting from the hip, basing this on each individual situation. This has to be pretty much etched in stone. I mean, how can you add to that?
Yeah, I would agree with you. And those are these are good guidelines from OSHA. If you got a temperature of 104, you don't come to work. Are you going to take people's temperature? It's up to you. But I've got clients that they've actually got a walk-through infrared detector that'll pick up your temperature coming through. They've actually invested in that. All right. I've got other clients where, yeah, they're hitting you with the touchless thermometer before you come in the door. But there's other things to look out for too. You could have nagging cough. On the list that I put out there, there's nagging cough, could be it, chills, muscle aches, headaches. My favorite one is blue lips. Blue lips. Blue lips. Now,
well, and let's, but you have to stress too that,
something's wrong with you. You've got blue lips, Hey, Ed's got blue lips. I think he should go home. Yeah, Ed should go home or the emergency room. Dying.
If our viewers aren't aware, the CDC did expand the symptoms, the list of symptoms. And so you really need to get, if your consultant or if your HR rep is not aware of that, please get a hold of that. And again, work with your supervisors, because now chills, headaches, muscle pain, all the kinds of things that people are getting just by waking up after a hangover. I mean, it's not COVID related, but
right.
If they have 2 or more of those symptoms, the CDC is, giving you the permission to let them stay home and go into quarantine. So, and then again, do they fall under the FFCRA programs? You're just going to have to kind of let that ball start rolling. But you definitely put that on your list. You want the updated CDC symptoms list, because trust me, the employees are going to know them.
Yeah.
They're going to know them.
And that's the one thing is I keep going back to the OSHA guidelines, because I think they're good guidelines and they have adopted them from the CDC. And they could evolve even more. This is the new norm. I mean, let's think about it. You're going to have the Families First Act that covers that sick time and everything through the end of this year, the CARES Act for the unemployment and everything, the maybe PPP for the loans and everything, because that's going to go through the end of the year. These workplace, and we always forget, it's safety. No, it's safety and health. It's safety and health. This has always been out there, but now you have no choice. If you're going to come back to business, you have to muscle up your policies on keeping the place clean, and you have to enforce it. The days of cleaning once a year are gone. That I want to have plenty of cleaning supplies throughout the day, gloves, masks, hand sanitizers. If people are going to work within 6 feet, you got to make a decision. If people are going to be within 6 feet of each other, are they going to be required to wear masks? Most of my clients are saying yes. If you're within 6 feet of each other, if you're not, those are going to have to be up to you. And like I said, I put all this stuff on my website for free because I want people to use it. And again, you're talking about humans, so you want to convince them. I found one graphic online that I thought was great. They took an infrared or ultraviolet or some kind of picture of this woman's hand. She washed her hands for 6 seconds with soap, which is what most people do. Okay. She shouldn't have even bothered. The germs that were still you almost see them jumping all over her hand. They're just covered in her hand. She then washed her hand for 30 seconds. The difference is night and day. And when you show people that type of stuff, that it convinces them. And you're absolutely right. The days of saying, we're out of soap, okay? I think those are gone. Right away, you should say, oh my God, this really does. The flu's killed people, and now this kills people. So yeah, we got to start taking germs much more seriously.
Yeah, well, and record keeping. I think the level of documentation during this time period is highly underestimated. And this is what I need to really, I keep going back to this, but viewers, when you're watching all these webinars, you've got to be careful and really think about your business model, your business setting. You've got to think about the team that you're working with. Please do not think that the principles or some of the practices that a major publicly traded company with 5,000 employees is going to apply to you only having 40 employees or 30 employees or maybe even 3 employees.
Right.
You have to really understand that they've got systems and money and expertise that you aren't going to have. And when the doors completely open and your customers start coming back or your phones start ringing again, all the problems that you had 6 months ago within the HR arena are all going to return as well. Somebody's going to be shorted on their paycheck. Somebody's lunch has been eaten in the refrigerator. Somebody, fell in the parking lot. Somebody can't come in because their dog died. You're going to have all that coming back on you, and you're not going to have time to watch a webinar or read a 62-page toolkit. You're going to have to start really looking at what solutions do you need and start putting in the documentation and the protocols that are appropriate for that. It really concerns me that we're not looking at real solutions and helping companies understand how to caveat truly in so that it's not going to be even more overwhelming. Is there any other documentation that I'm forgetting, Scotty? Oh, I can just thought of one. One of my clients has the employees calling in their temperature every day. They just call in and say, okay, I'm temperature free, I'm headed in. I said, well then how can you, if 6 months from now somebody accuses of you of allowing sick people through the door, how are you going to prove that? And she goes, oh, I didn't think I'd ever have to. I said, well, if you're going to use it to base a decision on today, you need to keep record of that. So otherwise you can't reference it 6 months from now or 6 days from now.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. And, you're hitting on so much common sense, which actually happens to mirror OSHA's record keeping. I usually don't compliment the federal government, but, here they're doing pretty good. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's because the emergency of the situation, the guideline, and understand, I'm not just saying that OSHA says, gee, it would be a good idea if you did this. No, you better be training your people. So, and you better be documenting. So, I wouldn't necessarily document when people are healthy, but I would tell you when someone calls off sick, you certainly should be recording that anyway. Okay. And, is it a fever? Is anything COVID related? The EEOC even said, you have every right in the world to ask people if they've been exposed to COVID. You have every right in the world to have somebody that maybe was quarantined or whatever to produce a COVID-free statement from their doctor. So even the EEOC is taking this stuff into consideration and allowing employers to document that. And now you've heard me say this 1,000 times. Now we're right back to just good old-fashioned employment law. If it isn't written down, it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and Scott, thank you, because that's the next thing. That's the third thing I want all of our viewers to write down on their list is that if you have not been properly trained on EEOC regulations on what you can or cannot speak to in regards to health conditions of an employee, please, again, get with your consultant or your labor law attorney and have them review those with you, because there is a very fine line. And if your supervisors aren't trained, they will take a COVID conversation and wrap it into ADA lines and start asking questions about diabetes or heart disease. I had someone call me the other day and say, yeah, we're going to severance a 65-year-old woman off. She's high risk. We're just going to severance her out. And I said, high risk for what? Wait, what are you doing here? And he goes, well, but it's time for her to go.
Oh, God.
Oh my gosh.
I was supporting you when you said that.
Scott would be saying, oh, well, then just get your checkbook out. I said, well, what's your reason for terminating her? And he goes, well, we're trying to protect her. She's high risk. She's at that 65 age range, and we just think it would be better for her. But we want her to collect unemployment. We really want to take care of her.
Yeah, don't forget the pregnant women. Yeah, get them too. You're at it.
I said, excuse me, but I will not be charging you for this because I don't want to be anywhere close.
Oh, you hit on a really good point. And it's funny, a lot of what I've been updating, there's certain laws that are going to affect everybody. You never know if you're going to have this. Okay, these laws are still out there, and I'm watching employers drop like flies. Like which laws? Oh, yeah. FMLA is still there, alive and well. ADA is still there, alive and well. Fair Labor Standards Act. I've seen more violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act because of people telecommuting for one thing or another. and of course, harassment law. It is amazing to me. Everybody's learning this technology. I have a
Yeah.
whole new way to harass you. Okay.
Yeah.
Things occur to certain people. They're not normal. These are not normal people. Okay. Just the things that I'm running into, I'm like, oh, you should never have a camera. You should never have a computer. No more telecommuting for you. There was a judge that actually had to come out and he disciplined these attorneys because they'd come to Zoom conferences and they wouldn't have anything on. And they're like, yeah, it's a trial thing. And he says, look, put on a tie, put on something. You don't show up and you like no shirt. Okay, you're in court. Now see where I'm coming from? Common sense isn't.
It's a little bit different than having your dog show up in this.
Oh yeah.
Remember,
Yeah. If you
one of my favorite.
Yeah.
One of my favorite phrases is "age is no sign of maturity." I'll have to come up with one for that one.
No, it's amazing. Honestly, the whole world of telecommuting will never be the same, which honestly, our IT folks, I don't know how they're keeping up these days. I mean, oh my God.
Let's find out. Let's bring on our next guest from the president of T6 Group, as well as the executive director of the circuit, Tracy Ruberg. Tracy, well, how have you enjoyed the show so far?
Certainly some stuff I never thought about before.
Yay! Scott, we're accomplishing it.
Yeah. Right.
And some visuals I wish I hadn't had.
Yeah, I don't sleep much. Yeah.
Well, and you heard me tell the viewers that I want them to write down some very important points. So please make sure that when you get to those that you will identify them, because it's important. I want them to understand just how valuable your information is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me back as well. It's always a good conversation. So as you said, I'm going to kind of come at this from an IT and a process operational background. I don't have that HR legal stuff like you and Scott do. So, and there's even more reason why now after I listened to what you all have said. I go, okay, there's other experts out there. So from my perspective, there's kind of two sets of things people should be thinking about right now. One is the tactical steps, which is where you're really focusing today. There's also a set of strategic steps that this whole situation has created a great opportunity for us. So I'm going to go through the tactical kind of things first, and then we'll tackle the strategic. From a tactical perspective, as you're getting ready to go back, there's the tactical right now, which is if you are a larger organization, and that will vary what that means to some people. Some people may have these things if they have 50 employees, other it may be 200. If you are less than 50 employees, you probably have not really ever done monitoring of your systems or your network to know how much is being used, how often are they being hit. But if you're using third-party providers, a hosting company, software as a service, they should have a way to tell you what that activity is. Now is a great time to really be looking into that for a couple of reasons. Because you've moved out of the office into an at-home environment, you're accessing those services in a different way. So people have had to figure out how to do things differently. It's a really good time to look at and say, well, I think they use this tool the most and this has spiked and that has spiked. Go look and verify what that volume is so you can be prepared going back. Because one of the things that's part of the strategic piece is what have we been using and what did I think we were using? But now that we've made this shift, I find out people really aren't using it at all anymore, so I can turn it off. And or what have we been using and now the volume has gone through the roof because we figured out a different way, a smarter way. So you've got network monitoring and usage kind of stats as a tactical step to take right now. If you can get your service providers to give you that, if you're a smaller organization, if you're a bigger organization and you have tech guys, they should be able to tell you that. That's going to help you know how to transition back in and what to prepare for. When you look at that and you go to the next place, you go, did I have to turn anything on that enabled my workers to work at home? So one of the big things I've been hearing with a lot of folks goes around the security. You have access, The good companies have it set up so you either have really crazy security passwords that you don't have to change, because right now the shift is to moving to those really crazy ones that only you can remember. But if they're really good, you only have to change them once a year. Most people aren't there yet. They're still in the changing them every 90 days. When you shift to at home, depending on how that was set up, some organizations were unable to do that. So they've made it so you only have to change your password every 180 days to get them through this. And or they've scheduled so you had to actually physically go into the office to do that. So if you're one of those probably larger organizations, 50 employees, 200 employees up, that has that password change, did you have to open that up? And if you did you make any changes to that policy and process that you want to keep, but you have to make sure, to Scott's point earlier, have we really trained the employees on how this works? So we're going to change that and change that process. What's that training? And how do we document that and adjust the process policy going forward? My gut is most organizations, it's that security thing is probably the only thing they had to open up. But some businesses may have found that they had to give rights to certain programs or reports or processes to individuals that did not have the office, because the process had to shift, particularly organizations that were heavily reliant on paper. And now all of a sudden they can't pass the paper around, whether it be a caseload, a project, a proposal that needed signatures, engineering firms that had to have engineering stamps and signatures. A lot of those kind of companies have had to keep one guy in the office just to do that paper, press that seal on there and get that signed. So if you've had to open up or grant rights for that, again, is that something that's going to stay? If so, be sure to adjust your policy and your process, let everybody know. If not, educate them that you're taking it back, because you're going to get employees kind of upset about that. Security, of course, is a biggie. Everybody went home. Everybody's access at home is different. So they have different experiences, different speeds. Hopefully you already walked them all through how to make their home networks secure. I know I can drive through certain neighborhoods, click my Wi-Fi, and just start trying everybody's Wi-Fi from the edge of their driveway, because they never changed the network passwords.
My goodness.
It's just like if you drive up to McDonald's and sit in their parking lot, you can get on McDonald's Wi-Fi from the parking lot. You can get on a Panera Wi-Fi from the parking lot. You drive through neighborhoods, you can do that. If you didn't coach your employees how to do that, please go back and do that right away. Help them. That adds extra work for you. And that one applies whether you're 2 employees or 2,000. I mean, that's a biggie. And along with that is making sure they downloaded and uploaded the latest security patches to all of that equipment. Hopefully most of them have a good service provider bringing that in, and those security patches are automatically downloaded. Most of them do that, but changing what they call the SSID, which is the secure ID network on that home Wi-Fi box, so that it's locked down. So, you know, John Jones next to me can't hop on my network and use up all my bandwidth. So hopefully that one's already done, but if not, go back and do that. Another tactical step to do is double check where your backups are. When you sent everybody home, hopefully they're coming into your network either as a service or through a VPN tunnel, and they're still doing all their backups and saving everything to your systems. However, if that's not been very clear, and this is one that would probably impact smaller organizations more than larger, they may be storing things on their local or on their personal cloud. So hopefully not, but double check where they put stuff. I just created a Word document. Oh, I just saved it here and I sent it as an attachment to Sally, and Sally saved it over here, but it's not really on any corporate network anywhere. May or may not be an issue, but I generally would see that type of activity in the smaller organizations. Tactically, when you get to the, okay, we're going back to the office. From an IPT perspective, what do I have to do? Well, the first question is did I send equipment home with everybody? Lots of companies, particularly call centers, had to send home equipment with their folks. They had to send them phones. They sent them multiple monitors because it was difficult to do their work without having monitors. And not only could you not go find them to have them get them themselves, but you couldn't tell people, you got to go buy it yourself. You know, it's sitting on your desk doing nothing. Yes, go ahead and take it home. So now you have the question, how am I going to get that equipment back? Am I going to clean it? Am I going to have a station that comes into the, you know, everybody brings it into the building and I bring these 5 people in 15-minute increments and I have a crew that's sanitizing it. And then I say, great, and we take it to your workstation, we put it back. Am I saying I was going to refresh that equipment anyway? So guess what, Mr. Employee, just keep that equipment. I'm buying new. I'm now going to transfer title that, write it off, whatever the accounting things are. I don't have a clue. That's not my gig. But what are you going to do to get equipment back into the building? Another big one is just like we're using the video conferencing tool here, people have figured out how to leverage this new technology, which is fantastic. Some organizations probably has more than one tool now. Somebody may have gone out and gotten a personal Zoom and be using the free version. They may be using Teams because they figured out that they have Office 365 and oh yeah, it came with it, but the company may or may not have been ready to roll it out. They may be using Google Hangouts because that's what they used to call grandma on Sunday, and that's just what they were used to. So are you going to want to and need to pull back that tool usage and say, this is the corporate standard. This is the one we have a license to. This is the one legally we can use, and this is the default. And if so, again, getting to Scott's point earlier, let's train your people on that. It's really easy. There's lots of YouTube videos. There's lots of tutorials. They're not difficult, but give them the guidelines as well on how to use that. Make sure the security parameters are set correctly, that you have your own personal meeting ID that is auto-generated, that you let people into the rooms, that you tell people if you're going to record. I was on a call earlier today that I didn't know was being recorded until we disconnected and I happened to see this meeting was recorded. And I went, oh, yay, I didn't know that. So think about your collaboration tools and what your standard is going to be, how you want to move forward. Those are probably the biggest tactical ones. One of the other ones, to your point with visitors, Pandy, lots of companies, either by their own policy, as you know, or because they're required to by law, anybody that deals with government contracts, you have to sign in. So some people use kiosks to do that. Well, if now I have to touch the kiosk to sign in. So what do I have to do to make sure that's clean? Do I have to put wipes next to it so that I can wipe it off before I use it? Do I have Q-tips and I use my own little Q-tip that works and I punch all the keys and then I throw that away? Do I still use paper and I just have a thing of pens and I say, sign here, keep the pen? But think about what your tool is for that type of thing. Some of that's technology, but as much as I love technology, sometimes the best answer is not technology, go old school. You know, if you're already using paper for a sign-in log for visitors, just keeping that, just get a bunch of cheap pens and use that. You know, kind of like you referenced earlier, Scott, the infrared technology. I'm seeing a lot of conversation around that, around the IT and the CIOs that I deal with. Gee, should I pay a service to come in and take temperatures versus buying this infrared camera for $5,000 versus this kiosk that will log and do everything HIPAA that's up to $25,000? Well, obviously that question varies based on the type of business you're in, how big you are. You only have 10 employees. You're not going to spend $25,000 on a kiosk.
Right.
Do that. You're also probably not going to spend money to have a nurse stand there for a half an hour all day. So trying to match that process with the technology and the tools that are out there that make sense for your business based on its size and its industry and its location will be an interesting thing to do. So those are the tactical steps. Those are easy. Those are the check boxes. They need to be thinking about those and getting them back. And then trying to coordinate. IT's got to really coordinate all of this activity with the rest of the business to manage the waves as the employees come back. If you've only got 10, that's not a big deal. You can schedule them every 15 minutes, bring them back in the first day, you're good. You've got thousands of employees, you're not do that in a day.
No. No. And
You're not going to be able to figure that out. So it's got to have a close communication between your IT team and those leaders with the rest of the organization to figure out, how am I turning the technology on? How am I making sure I've got it correct? Where am I going with all of those tools? So I'll stop right there for a second and see if you have any questions or want to clarify any points, Pandy or Scott.
well, I want to go back over, give us those bullets on what the training should be again. You know, training them on the collaboration tools, you know, even just cleaning, but give us that list one more time.
So you've got the collaboration tools. What are you using? You've got the security issues, whether it's for your at-home router security or your passwords. How are you resetting those for the basic tools and systems that you access? And then you've got, the third one that just went. Collaboration, security. Yeah, there was a third one that just completely went out the window.
Well, and let me ask you, as the consultant that you are, what companies are overlooking this? What seems to be the barriers that's preventing companies from having you come in and do these kind of trainings, Tracy, that we need to emphasize why that's important?
The small to mid-size think some of these things don't apply to them, and or understandably, they're just trying to hang on. So they're a little bit afraid and just hasn't crossed their radar.
Yeah.
Bigger companies seem to understand that they have to deal with it. They're asking the questions. They just don't have all the answers yet. And a part of it is a bandwidth issue. It's not like they had free time to begin with.
Right.
They all had full-time jobs that were keeping them busy. Now all of a sudden we're adding all these extra steps. That's saying you've got to figure out how we're going to schedule these back, how we're going to reset everything, where we're going to go. So everybody did that very quickly and hurriedly on the way out. Now we've got to take a breath and figure out what we want to do on the way back in.
Well, and if I heard you correctly at the beginning, you made a couple comments about reevaluating what exercises or what processes they've been putting into place and realizing, okay, maybe we don't need to spend money on this, or maybe we, should put more emphasis on that. I mean, this is a budget. This is something that actually can hit their budget. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we get into the strategic side of things that I think, although certainly no one's choice, is the upside of this whole event for everybody. From a general business perspective, this has forced everybody to really stop and think about their business. Now, some people are on that treadmill and they turned the speed up and they're having trouble keeping up and they're just trying to get by. Other people, that treadmill has slowed to nothing or stopped completely. So they're sitting there scratching their head, figuring out, what do I do now? But every single organization, regardless of size, should be using this time to say, wow, I thought I would have this problem when I had to go to work from home or when the business slowed, and that problem didn't happen. Why not? Was it not really an issue to begin with? Is it something we were doing that is no longer needed, not appropriate, not a customer demand, not an operational or legal requirement? So to be able to ask those strategic questions, what did we think was going to be a challenge and wasn't? Why not? What did we find is working really well? I couldn't tell you how many organizations I've talked with that have said, we're actually finding out we're a lot more productive. We figured out a new way to have a faceless, voiceless meeting by using a Google Doc. We just simply create the Google Doc, post the questions, management vets the topic, posts it back out, everybody pings it, and boom, they're done. There's no meeting, there's no time, it's on everybody's time, everybody's voice gets heard. So what are we learning, whether it's with the technology or not? In some cases, we quit using a technology, we quit a process, and we found out we don't need it anymore. It really wasn't serving us. On the other hand, what have we figured out is helping us? Having office hours, doing a different type of team meeting, leveraging the video tools. How we thought we had to have all of this paper. We've now shoved this type of document signing tool through the process, adopted it faster than we ever would, and we're great. talked to one organization that deals with foster care. They're thrilled to death that telehealth has happened as quickly as possible. It would have taken
Wow,
years to
really?
get to where they are now. Now, whether or not the government's going to allow it to continue, they don't know yet.
Yeah,
But their goal used to be 12 face-to-face visits a week with the foster child. Well, now through telehealth, that whole metric's different. They can change that dramatically.
wow.
Where has this pandemic created opportunities for us to leverage change, leverage process improvements, deletions, enhancements, and the technology? And like I said, sometimes it's technology based and sometimes it's not.
Mhm.
Those are the things we should really be asking is what's working better than we ever thought it would? What are we not using that we don't flat out need anymore? What new opportunity has come up that if we leverage technology just like this instead of that, we now have a whole new market we can go out, or we have a whole new way to be productive with our team and communicate. What process and procedure did we have that if we open it up, we can now do these 10 things if we just ignore it? Why were we creating 39,000 reports that no one reads? What a great time to look at that. Why are we spending the people time, the process time, the paper time, the storage time? Those are all things you can get rid of, particularly for organizations that have invested heavily in the cloud, and especially those that have invested heavily in cloud infrastructure for development and testing. What typically happens, like most of us, we go out, we start something new, we get it going, we go, great. We move it into production, how we're really going to go work, but we never go out and clean up the old file drawers. We leave it all sit there. We were paying for that stuff. Well, now's a really good time to say, why am I don't need that anymore. Shut it down, shut it down, shut it down, and figure it out. That for other large organizations, you may have the opportunity to even renegotiate some contracts, figure out where you are, what your growth needs to be, how you can scale. That will vary dramatically by the size of your organization and the type of services you're using. But for smaller companies, that your opportunity is not significant there.
Yeah. And let's go back to put some emphasis on, you mentioned policies very briefly, but to Scott and I, that our world rotates and is dependent on what the written word is. And I'm always reminding people, be careful what's written, because that's what you're going to be held accountable for. So don't put something in writing that you're not actually going to be able to either exercise or defend. And, as we were talking about, what's a condition of employment for many practices in the HR arena, from an IT perspective, if I heard you correctly, you're reminding them to go back to some of their IT policies and maybe take a good look at what those say, because again, even the smallest bit of company equipment is not to leave the premises, or just small things like that. That's all outdated. It needs to be reviewed and rewritten.
Yeah, you've got two key areas. One is all of those policies and procedures, to your point, that tie directly into employees, work from home, remote work, remote access, the password terms and policies, all the security procedures, because those will vary depending on the size of the organization and the tools that you're using and how you're using them. You may have been forced to change them and no one's had time to go back and update it. So make sure you go back and update that.
That goes on the list. That goes on the list, viewers. Put that on the list. That's something you've got to do.
Yeah, and go back and update the equipment. We just let people take home hundreds, thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Did we keep good track of that? And what's our recourse to get it back?
Just to throw in there, I just was making some notes. I love what you're saying, and this is the world that's coming, and you can get into hundreds, thousands of dollars. I'll tell you, I've been preaching this for years because I've run into clients, they want oh my gosh, I bought a Mac for my son to go to college with, and I used to PCs, and then I found out a Mac isn't $1,200, it's $4,000. Well, get an inventory control agreement. I'll tell you, record the serial number, that they confess judgment, they get it back to you. If not, they owe. I'll tell you, this will scare the bejeebies out of them. If they don't return it to you in a timely manner within 5 days or something like this, they owe you all of the attorney's fees and costs of recovery.
And that needs,
The attorney's fees will dwarf the cost of that equipment.
and that all needs to be in writing too,
In
Scott.
writing.
I mean,
Right.
that's, and they also need to understand too, that the different states have different laws about inventory and equipment. You can, let's take Kentucky. Kentucky, if somebody drops their cell phone or drops their laptop, we can't charge the employee back for that. We can't recover those costs for
Right.
damage, but in Ohio we can.
Yeah.
So, to your point, we really need to encourage our viewers to go back and look at those policies, find out, again, number one, what inventory is out on the remote work sites, and then what does your state permit in terms of recovery of any kind of damage or repair or lost equipment, because who knows what the 4-year-old's going to do with the mouse.
Yeah.
And
Well, you just open up an estate, you better know what you're getting into. That's why I tell my clients to go to Las Vegas and not San Francisco. You're not going to like California. I will tell you right now. Las Vegas is great. Wonderful.
And let's go back to the one of the biggest things that you emphasize, Tracy, is look, this is a time to learn. This is a time where, and I'm going to go back on another one of my little rants. This is an interesting show for me and my rants, but you know what? Some of these business owners and some of the business leaders need to tuck and hide those egos. This is not a time to stand firm in your boots there and say, well, this is the way we've always done it, and we're just going to go back to because that's the way it worked. This is a time for you to wake up and realize that no one asked for this. We've all been forced to accept this. And we all need to be students. We all need to be little sponges and absorbing the new way and just accept it. Change is the only constant in the universe. And Tracy, I love the way you kept saying that there's so much to be learned, both good and bad, because the only bad that can come out of it is us not wanting to learn or adjust.
Well, just like I said with the foster care organization, I continue to tell you multiple organizations that have said, our culture really wasn't to let anybody work from home.
Yes.
Wow, suddenly now we're okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
We now say we can conduct business very well that way. A lot of the companies that I talk to have already said, we're not even thinking about going back to the office until at least July 1, because they've found that they can work so well the way they're doing it. There's no need. I've had 2 organizations tell me I'm negotiating space dramatically different than I would have 30 days ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I don't need this.
Let me ask you, Tracy, because I'm sitting here thinking as definitely a small business guy, and I'm saying, do you just have people call you up and say, hey, can you come and take our temperature? Because I don't even know the questions to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here, I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Those are the questions and that thinking out of the box. So, and Panda, you hit on one of my biggest. The minute somebody says, well, that's the way we've always done it, ding, 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 bells should be going off. That is
Absolutely.
signal that says
for you is your casket.
yeah, you can and should be investigating anything you say that.
Yeah.
Anything you say, well, we've always done it that way. You better be looking at, are you doing it that way because it's truly foundational to your business and add value? Or if it's because that's the way it was and nobody ever figured out why. And to get to the why, I got to ask you 7 times and may never know why it's done that way. And then you go, well, if you can't tell me why you're doing it and you can't tell me there's a benefit, then freaking get rid of it. It's not serving you.
And Tracy, I'm gonna play off that a little bit further. Right now is not a time to be asking someone with maybe a couple months worth of experience. And I'm in the grand scheme of things, because none of us have gone through this. We need to be surrounding ourselves with people who are grounded with the understanding of the benefits of change and understanding, at some point in 30 or 40 years, there's been some experience that can be applied to this time period. So I'm going to ask our viewers one more time, be very selective as you start opening up your doors and your life starts returning back to the schedules and the input that is going to be expected or output that's going to be expected of each of you, you're going to be very selective in how you spend your time. And I'm going to encourage you strongly to surround yourself with a board of advisors. And then we'll just call that a circle of experts. I don't care who you are, you make sure that there's somebody there with a financial mind, someone who can help you understand not only these loans and grants and all of the government activities, but what about the day-to-day? How are we going to get the money in, and when and how are we going to let the money out? Get yourself surrounded by an expert with IT, because technology is going to be a part of your business, whether you've got 1 employee or 1,000 employees. Technology is now going to be, whether it's the thermometer or whether it's the record keeping that you're going to need from your payroll company, technology is going to be a part of your life. So get an IT person in your life. And if you don't have an HR expert, and I'm talking about someone who's lived HR, not somebody who just decided to go into HR 5 years ago. You get yourself a good labor law attorney, or you get yourself a good solid HR consultant who has lived HR and understands compliance. As Scott said, employment law is going to be one of the highest and most demanding areas moving forward right now. Well, I guess it has been for a couple of years, but you need to get a solid set of extra eyes looking at every one of those 3 areas. This has been a phenomenal show. I really, really appreciate the information that you have provided for us. Tracy, thank you again. Scott, love you to death.
Thanks. Have fun. I learned a lot. I got a lot of notes.
Well, and I want to remind our viewers that you both have fabulous websites. You're both solid consultants that talk to businesses of all sizes. You're available. You're ready. Again, we want this show to be relevant and engaging. If you have any comments or suggestions, please let us know. My name is Mandy Pridemore, Principal Consultant with Human Resource USA, and I want to thank ICRC Cable TV here in Sharonville for allowing us to, again, have a COVID-19 HR and business update. Hope to see you next week.